So we look forward to having that at this time. I'll just call on P.E. Newton to do the introduction and welcome. P.E. Newton, you again.
Thank you. Thank you, President Junior. It's great to be here.
President.
Yes.
Good evening.
Sorry. Yes.
Are you following the agenda?
I am. I think I am. Let
Okay.
me. Well, all right. I just look at it. I don't even think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I got it mixed up. I thought he was introducing the guest speaker. Sorry.
No. Thank you, though.
You use the word introduction and it show me up.
Welcome an introduction. Right. All right. Thank you, PDT. Thank you.
Thank you, President
ahead,
Junior. PDT Ralston, I heard on the radio this evening they're having some talk soon about Alzheimer's and all of that, early dementia. So I don't know. I'll find out when and give you the location. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here. Real great to have all of you with us tonight. You know, special welcome to Professor Simon Mitchell, who is going to be talking to us a little, just real special welcome. I mean, and some people might say, why, to IPP Paul. I mean, I noticed IPP Paul is all the way in Japan, and from my recollection and from what I hear, he never misses a meeting and he's never late. So, you know, that's the sort of example that we want the younger members to follow. And I was so happy to hear you say prospect Joshua Brown.
Right.
So very special welcome to Joshua Brown also. So let me go down and give persons a chance now to, you know, introduce themselves and their delegation. Let's start off with those Kiwanians outside of Jamaica. Do we have any Kiwanians outside of Jamaica with us? Kiwanians outside of Jamaica? Okay, what about Kiwanians in Division 25? Division 25? Okay, what about Division 24? Do we have any Kiwanians with us this evening from Division 24? Division 24, anyone with us from Division 24? Okay, well, let's go then to 23 East. I know we must have some friends from 23 East with us this evening.
Hello, good night.
Hello, good night.
I'm IPP Audrey from the Kiwanis Club of Papine. I'm not sure how many members are on with me at the moment because I'm just stepping off from the road. We wish you a successful meeting and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, IPP Audrey. You know, I wish I had a gift for the first person to speak tonight because I would have been happy to give it to you, but maybe we can talk to these East at some other time about it. Glad to have you. Anyone else from Division 23 East? How about Division 23 West? Do we have any? Go ahead.
Good night, everyone. This is P.E. Christine Elliott from Diverse Professionals of Portmore Pines. We are 2 in numbers. Along with me is President Amelia Walker. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, P. Christine, and it's always glad to have, we're always happy to have you on your delegation, always. Anyone else from 23 West? No? Okay, what about Division 23 Central? Remember, people, it's not yet time to drop cover and hold. It's time to talk now.
Hi, good night. Kiwanis Young Professionals St. Andrew. With me tonight, I have our president, Tina Turner Thomas, and it's a delegation of 4.
Okay.
Okay, great having you. Any other club from anyone else from Division 23 Central?
Yes, PE, I'm Newton. Good evening. How are you doing?
Hi, my friend. I'm always glad to see you. I'm great.
Great. Well, at this time, I'm going to, I think I have 2 of us, myself and LGE Desmond, who is a dual member. I'm not seeing anyone else at the moment, but I'm sure that at least one other will join. So
Okay.
we currently have a delegation of 2.
Okay, P, you really see. As usual, glad to have you, even though, you know, it's always kind of difficult to when we welcome you as a visitor, it's tongue in cheek, because I think you're the honorary member of Kiwanis Club of Kingston by now.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Right.
It's so good.
Anyone else from Division 23 Central?
P. Newton, PVP Mark Anderson here from the Kiwanis Club of North St. Andrew. I think I'm the only one online just now. Hopefully some more will add as we go on. Looking forward to it.
Okay, great having you. Great having you. Thanks for coming. I'm pretty sure there are some more 23 Central online.
Happy Newton.
Hello.
I know we have New Kingston online because I saw DLG Gerthlin. So maybe we could just say hi.
Okay. Hi, DLG Gertlin and her crew. I will call your crew or your delegation. I will refuse to call them your posse. All right. Any SLPs? I know we should have some SLPs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Danielle, and here with me is our faculty advisor, Alvic Douglas, and I think one member is here, which is Absidy. Thank you guys for the invite.
Okay, thank you, VP Daniel and super faculty advisor, Aldi, along with the rest of your delegation. Always happy to have you, and we are glad you're always with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I just saw 2 more covers join as well. So.
That's great. Happy to have them. Any other SLPs? Any other SLPs with us? Okay. What about persons who were invited by a Kiwanian, guests of Kiwanians? Let us know that you're there. Any guests of Kiwanians? Okay, what about persons who just heard that Kiwanis is a great club and Kiwanis Club of Kingston's meeting is a great place to be, so you decided to log on? Any other person who is not a Kiwanian and is not a guest of Kiwanian, but just decided to join us tonight? No? All right. Well, I guess that's it. I mean, and I'm pretty sure we have a great evening lined up, and I'm not going to take up any more of your time. It's back to you, President Junior.
Thank you. Thank you, P. Newton. We then move to apologies for absence. Any apologies for absence tonight?
President
you.
Junior, we have an apology from the LGE Trevor Christian.
Okay. Any other apologies for absence? If not, we're moving on. And I'm going to be calling now on VP Stephen to do the recognition of birthday and anniversaries. VP Steve.
Yes, good afternoon, President, and thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you. Yes.
Let me also extend my welcome to all of the Kiwanians and guests who are here this afternoon. We're looking forward to a really entertaining and educational meeting. And as
Yeah.
always, the Kiwanis Club of Kingston enjoys everybody's company. So today, as usual, I'm going to now, as part of our program, share with you those Kiwanians who have a special day today. So BK Easton McKinley celebrates his birthday on the 27th of this month. So happy birthday to him when it comes on the 27th. As well as Audrey, the wife of DP Derek Clark, her birthday is on the 28th of January. So extend to her special greetings when that comes along. And in terms of anniversaries, DP Lascelles Dixon and Sandra celebrate their anniversary on the 26th of this month, as well as Kiwanian Dennis Townsend and his wife Nazaline, I hope I pronounced that correctly, on the 30th of January. So special birthday greetings and anniversary greetings to our fellow Kiwanians. And at this juncture, I would also like to extend to all our guests or fellow Kiwanians, if they have a birthday they're celebrating this week or an anniversary or some other special occasion that they'd like to share with us, I'm opening up the microphone to anybody who has a special day that they would like to share. Okay, going once. Any special occasion? I'm assuming that maybe there isn't this week, but I'm sure we'll have some next week. So President Junior, back to you. And thank you everybody for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, VP Stephen. We'll now move to our Kiwanis education, and that will be done for us by LGE Desmond. LGE Des.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, President.
Good evening again,
Junior.
right? Yes.
My topic is history of Kiwanis. Two natives of Detroit, Michigan, Alan Brownie and, well, a professional organizer, and Joseph Prance, a tailor, formed a fraternal club of young professional businessmen in 1914. Emanating from this association was the subsequent Charter of Kiwanis, January 21, 1915. The motto. In 1920, the Kiwanis motto was, "We build." And in 2005, it was changed to "Serving the children of the world," emphasizing the primary focus of Kiwanis service over the years. The first Kiwanis club was Detroit #1, Michigan in 1915. Kiwanis finally became a worldwide organization of men and women who share the challenge of community and world improvement. There are members in the Kiwanis family representing every culture on every continent, all seeking to improve people's lives. Finally, in 1987, women were invited to join the Kiwanis movement. And in 2008, delegates approved a resolution for all Kiwanis clubs to celebrate and foster inclusiveness.
Right.
No discrimination whatsoever. So that's it for Kiwanis education, President. Thank you.
Thank you, LG. Thank you for that. And as you all know, we'll be having our guest speaker tonight is Professor Simon Mitchell, and he'll be telling us all we ever want to know about earthquake and how to prepare ourselves for it. Our DP Earl Spencer will be doing the introduction for us. DP Earl, are you on?
Very much so, President Junior. After a long break,
Yes, I
attending
noticed you. I
meetings.
noticed we missed you for a long time.
Well, they
For a
didn't.
little while. For a little while.
I think normally when a person is missing, they recognize then they are missed when we come. But that seems to have fallen out of style. Anyway, it is my pleasure to do the introduction of our guest speaker, Professor Simon Mitchell. He's a professor of sedimentary geology, and as I had it, research director at the earthquake unit of the University of the West Indies in the Department of Geography and Geology. Simon Mitchell received a BSc First Class Honors degree in geology from the University of Hull in 1989 and a PhD in geology from the University of Liverpool in 1993. He took up the post of lecturer in geology at the UWI Mona in January 1996 and was promoted to senior lecturer in 2000 and professor in sedimentary geology in 2006. His research interests lie in Mesozoic and Cenozoic sedimentology and paleontology, the stratigraphy, geology, and tectonics of Jamaica. I will interject here that when I was preparing for surveying, we had to do geology, and all these big words are now unfamiliar to me because we haven't used them in years. But they wanted us to go into caves and things like that, and geology was really interesting, but a bit daunting.
Yes.
So all these names are daunting to us. And anyway, the geology and tectonics of Jamaica, the development of geological resources, and the geological evolution of the Caribbean region. He is the recipient of the Gleaner Newspaper Honor Award for Science and Technology, and that was in 2011. The Chubb Award for Excellence in Geology by the Geological Society of Jamaica in 2013, and the Vice Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Research, UWI, in 2014. He has published more than 150 scientific papers and 200 presentations and conferences and meetings. He was head of the earthquake unit from 2013 to 2019 and regularly talks to media about earthquakes and geology in Jamaica. I'm sure he will enlighten us and make us feel less fearful once his presentation is complete. Please help me welcome Professor Simon Mitchell.
Prof, are you there?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Let's hear him.
Okay, so thank you. Now I have to work out how I share my screen. That's the only
Yes.
thing. Okay, let's have a look and see what we can find.
You have hosting privileges, co-hosting privileges.
It's thinking about it. Okay, so it came and it went. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. It came and it went. Can anybody see anything?
I'm seeing your screen. It looks like your screen, but it's blank.
Yeah, it's blank. Okay, well, let's see if we can find something that will fit with it. So let's try this one. Does that work?
No, it's the same blank screen for now.
Same blank screen for now. Okay, let's try another one. Does that work?
Okay, that's it.
You're saying that?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's
we're saying that.
good. Okay, let's go to presents and hopefully you can see that now, yes?
Yes, we're seeing that.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I actually quite like talking to people. A lot of what I say is quite complex, but what I'm going to have is the actual slides be more complex, and I'll talk about them and try and lead you through that. So also, I like a little bit of playback. So I'm going to ask a few questions and I hope somebody will be able to tell me something, because I think it's good to actually do it that way rather than me just saying things and it doesn't work that well. So first thing I want to do is to sort of say, okay, thank you. I've crawled across Jamaica for 27 years, okay? Nearly half my life now. And I probably know more about the geology of it than anybody else. Not because I've been here longer, but because I spend most of my time crawling across it. So I have a very good understanding of these sorts of things. And I apply this to all sorts of problems. And one of the problems we have is earthquakes. And that is obviously a big problem for us. And so what I want to do today is to sort of go through, tell you a little bit about the geology, tell you a bit more about the earthquakes and what you should be thinking about as it comes to looking after yourselves. Not if, but when we get a big one. So first of all, let me just show you there. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a trace. Okay, and that's the trace of the Haiti earthquake in 2010, about 12 years ago, yeah? 12, 13 years ago. People in Kingston felt that one. Okay, the people in the high rises in Kingston actually felt it. This is a trace that comes from Alaska, and we'll see it again later on. But what it does is it shows you the different sorts of waves that come. And we'll come back and talk about those, but you can see the different ones. There's P, there's S, and there's surface. So there's two body and there's actually two surface. Now, that's significant, and we'll come back to that. Well, what I want to do is to go through and really sort of tell you about earthquakes, tell you about the geology of Jamaica and how that really relates to earthquakes and why we should be concerned or why we shouldn't be concerned in certain places. So, first question, Caribbean. What was the last big earthquake that was reported? Anybody?
Haiti?
No, that was a long time ago. Anything in the last week or so?
Oh.
It was in the newspapers.
Antigua.
Guadeloupe.
Guadeloupe.
There was a 6 point something in Guadeloupe, and we'll come back and look at that. Well, actually, we'll look at it now. Here we go. This was an earthquake that happened. I don't know if people can see the top of the screen, but I can't. But this was an earthquake in Guadeloupe. And if you go onto the USGS, which is the sort of place you go and look at things, you get something like this. Okay, so it gives you a location, it gives you a magnitude at the top, depth, and it gives you a funny little ball-like thing down towards the bottom right. So what does it all mean? How do we understand that? And why didn't Guadeloupe suffer very, very serious, or maybe Guadeloupe it might be. Anyway, but why didn't it suffer difficulties? Okay. And that's what we want to understand. Okay, so I've got a sort of list of things. I'm just going to go on. I'm not going to worry about that too much. So first of all, what are earthquakes? Well, earthquakes are basically movements of faults. So this is just a section along the north-south highway And if you look at it, you can see in there are breaks in the sedimentary section. Okay, so nicely banded, and then it stops and it gets broken and it stops and gets the other way. And so what this is basically showing you where they've been fractured and moved. And that's what we call a fault when we see it, but when they actually move, that's what causes an earthquake. So we come and we have to do a little bit of things. So what we have is we have rocks, and those rocks are displaced in some way. Now, in this case, you've got a fault which is being dragged apart, and the two sides of it are being dragged down. If that happens, that would create an earthquake. But there are different ways that these things can happen. And so what I want to do is just go through and show you the different types. Okay, so one is they're dragged down. So in the top there, they are dragged down. You come to the middle and they go side by side, and you go to the bottom and one goes up over the other. And really what that does is it says that the stresses that are going on in the earth create these different sorts of things. And so you've got to ask the question, well, why? Why is that going on? Why are we seeing these sorts of things? And why are we seeing them in the Caribbean region? So, sorry for lots of things, but we need to say it. So the earthquakes are the shock waves. So they're produced when we get a fault that moves. So a fault that moves, it gives us shock waves, and that gives us an earthquake. Now, for a little fault, it doesn't matter. Little fault moves, get a little shake. The bigger or the longer the fault, the more the actual, basically, or the bigger the earthquake is going to be. So what we are concerned about is earthquakes that are generated from long faults. So when we have a small fault, it doesn't matter. When we have a long one, it's problematic. Now, we have certain terms, and you will have heard terms. So the first term is magnitude. Okay, and magnitude is what everybody says. It was a 6.3, it was a 7.2, or whatever it is. Now, what magnitude means is the energy released where the fault happened, where the actual displacement was. A magnitude is a exponential scale. So that a 2 is small, a 3 is 10 times a 2, a 4 is 10 times a 3, and it goes up. So going from a 6 to a 7 is 10 times. And that's why you don't get anything much more than a 9, because it's impossible, because that much energy can't be released. So magnitude is what happens where an actual earthquake happens. So where it is in the ground. So if we go back to our earthquake we saw to begin with, that was at 160 kilometers depth, a long way underground. So the energy release is a lot of energy, but it does affect us that much on the top. So where we're living, it doesn't affect us, or affect us minimally. You feel it, that's all. If that same earthquake had happened at a shallow depth, that would be a problem because it would cause a lot of destruction. So magnitude is one thing. It tells you the energy that is released by an earthquake. Okay, and so going 5, not so much, 6, 10 times as much, 7, 10 times as much, 8, 10 times as much more. So you can actually see that as increasing. And then there's the depth. And we just mentioned the depth, and that's where the center of the rupture was. And we don't hear the term hypocenter or focus talked about. All we hear about is epicenter. And the actual hypercenter or the focus is where it actually happened underground, and the epicenter is the bit on the ground above it. So if it's 160 kilometers down, where the epicenter is on the surface, it doesn't feel that much. If it was 10 kilometers down, it would feel a lot. So that is the sort of relationship between magnitude and depth. So you often see that there's a big earthquake, but if it's deep, and you have to look at those two things once. So what, number one, what's the magnitude? It's a 7. Oh, but it's a 200 kilometers depth. It's not going to be significant. If it's a 7 and it's 12 kilometers, it's going to cause major destruction. So you actually are working those two things together. But then we also have intensity. Intensity is the measure of what actually damage is done by that earthquake. So if it's close to the surface, it's going to cause a lot of destruction. You're going to get a lot of problems. You're going to have a high intensity. If it's deep, you may not even feel it. So those are the sorts of things that you have to bear in mind. I've got a little next slide that shows you intensity. But another thing we talk about is pre-shocks and particularly aftershocks. And what this relates to is the fact that earthquakes sit there, well, they're waiting to happen. They're always waiting to happen. And you'll see why in a bit because we'll talk about it. But what happens is stress builds up and eventually something moves. Now, it could be a small thing moves, and it goes click, 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 and then moves on to a bigger one, and you get the big earthquake, and then afterwards, everything adjusts, and you get lots of small ones afterwards. So the pre-shocks are the ones that come before, and the aftershocks are the ones that come afterwards. And that's simply because the ground is trying to adjust to what has gone on. Okay, so this is the sort of destruction scale. Now, only for about the last 50, 60, 70 years have we actually measured the magnitude of earthquakes, because before that we didn't do it. So for older earthquakes, we use this destructive scale, and it tells you how bad they were. And obviously the lower it gets on this, the worse they were. And you'll see that some of the bad ones at the bottom are some of the worst ones that actually happened in Jamaica in the past. And there's only been really 2 very bad earthquakes. There's been other bad ones, but 2 really bad ones. And they're both a long, long time ago. It doesn't mean there's going to be another one now, but it doesn't mean there won't be another one now. And what we have to do is worry about that, or not, as the case may be. So let's come back to that little diagram showing our earthquake in Haiti 12 years ago or so, 12, 13 years ago. There are 4 types of wave. There's P and S waves. Now, they travel through the rock, and they travel rather quickly, so they get there first. Not by a long time, but by a short time. So when you actually sit there and you feel an earthquake, you sometimes feel one, feel a second shock. It's the same earthquake. It's just different waves getting to you. PNS waves generally aren't that much of a problem. It's when you get the surface waves. And those are the ones that really are rather strange. And they're called Rayleigh waves, and they're love waves. Love is not because they're nice, it's because a mathematician called Love actually worked out what was going on. And what they do is they actually work on the surface of the earth. So when you get a big earthquake in the wrong place, which could be Kingston, for instance, you actually see the actual land going up and down as if it was waves coming in. These are these surface waves. These are the ones that do the damage. These are the ones that cause buildings to collapse. These are the problems. And it's not the sort of thing you expect to see. You don't expect to see the ground going up and down. That's not what you expect. But that's what happens in these situations. I showed you some little things on that first thing of a beach ball like thing, and we call them beach balls. That's the way we call them. And these are the sort of things that when we record earthquakes, we actually have this material. So I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but if you see at the top left, when a wave comes in, the first wave that comes in first goes up, the top one, but the bottom one, it goes down. And so that tells you something about where the earthquake happened and what the movement was. And if you plot the ups and downs, you end up producing a little beach ball on the right. I'm not going to worry about how you do that. I mean, usually we use computers to do it and that sort of thing. But that tells you it's an earthquake. Now, if it was an explosion, it wouldn't do that. It'd all go up in the same way. And so in that way, you can actually work out when there's an explosion. So in other words, somebody blasting something out in a quarry, or somebody sets up a nuclear weapon somewhere. Okay, and we'll come back to talk about the earthquake unit. The earthquake unit is one of the places in the world that monitors for illegal blowing up of nuclear weapons. But you can see, you get a little beach ball, and the pattern of the beach ball at the bottom right is actually dependent, or it shows you what type of fault. And we were talking about faults before. So I've sort of got it there, and you can see that if you look on the left, it's the sort of standards. So the white bit in the middle, it's a normal fault, it's extensional. If there's a dark bit in the middle, it's a compressional fault. And if it's a cross, it's a strike slip fault. And that tells us something about how we are getting deformation going. Of course, on the right-hand side, everything is messed up because there's basically bits between all of those. But we'll see how that relates to Jamaica in a little bit. We also need to realize that earthquakes aren't the only things we have to worry about. We also have to look after the things called tsunami, or harbor waves, as they were called in Japanese, where they were first described. They are produced by the fact that water is displaced. So water is displaced, and if water is displaced, it has to come back to normal, and it creates waves to come back to normal. So the big one, the big one was the Boxing Day tsunami, you know, a good number of years ago now, but you basically dropped a fort, you basically had an offset, and you had an awful lot of water that came in. And that killed 250,000 people. So these things are very, very important. It can go over, of course, it went over to Africa, and if it's a long way away, I call it a tele-tsunami. But it's not just that, it can be volcanic eruptions. So a volcanic eruption into water will displace water, and landslides into water. So if you have a big earthquake in Jamaica, there may be a landslide that goes into the sea, or a landslide under the sea that displaces water and can produce a tsunami. And there are reported tsunamis that have swept across places like South Lamar. So we also have to bear in mind that tsunamis are a big issue to us, something that we have to worry about. So let us look a little bit more about what the Caribbean looks like. So we consider ourselves in the Caribbean, which we are, but the Caribbean and the Caribbean plate are not the same thing. And we define plates based on distributions of earthquakes and volcanoes. So this shows the volcanoes, and you can see fairly obviously there's a set of volcanoes down the Lesser Antilles and a set of volcanoes along Central America, heading up in North America and Mexico. Those tell you those are plate boundaries. But what we can do further is we can actually go on and put the earthquakes on. And here are the earthquakes that go around the Caribbean. And I think if you look at that, you can start seeing that the Caribbean is ringed by a series of earthquakes, but not the whole Caribbean Sea, as we would say. If you look at the northern parts, it doesn't include Cuba. It goes south of Cuba, and it comes through the area close to us in Jamaica. And you can see in here the colors of some of these earthquakes. They go from red to yellow to blue, from shallow to deeper. And you can see on the eastern side and the western side, they do that. But in the middle part around Jamaica, they don't do that. Okay, and that is because we're dealing with things. So in the west and in the east, we have what we call subduction zones. That is where the oceanic crust, which is the Pacific and in the Atlantic, goes down and produces volcanoes. It doesn't happen on the north or the south of the Caribbean, where we just have these faults, which are the strike slip faults, basically the faults that are side by side. That is our problem. Those are the sorts of faults that are our problem, not the ones elsewhere. And if we look back at the earthquake over in the French Antilles, that was at the blue end of things, the deeper end of things, and that's why it wasn't significant in terms of causing damage. So if we put it together, we get a pattern like this. So the Caribbean plate is in the middle and it's moving about 2 centimeters a year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you put it over 10 years, okay, that's 20 centimeters, but over 100 years, it goes on and it adds up. And that is being progressively built up across the faults that exist. And so once you build that up enough, eventually a fault gives way and it moves and it gives us an earthquake. And you can also see up there, if you look at the north, that there are a couple of lines. There's one that goes north of Jamaica and there's one that goes through Jamaica. And those are the two faults, two significant faults on the northern margin of the Caribbean. The northern one is far enough away from us not to worry about too much. The southern one comes through the middle of Jamaica somewhere. We don't quite know where. It's a bit diffuse. That is the one where you have to worry about. That's the one that gave us the earthquake in Port-au-Prince in 2010, the one I've been showing. And of course, a couple of years ago, it gave us the other one a little bit further to the west. Just because something has moved, those two earthquakes show that very well, doesn't mean you can't get another one. So you've got to be a bit careful about that. So let's zoom in a little bit. This is the fault patterns that go around. And we hear a lot about the Enriquaro Plantain Garden Fault Zone, the Enriquaro Plantain Garden Fault, or the case is. And that's the one where you have those two faults movements that created earthquakes in Haiti. And that comes into Jamaica and it goes out the other side somewhere into the Walton Fault Zone. And so what you've got is you've got the Caribbean plate, you've got the Gonavave microplate, and then you've got the North American plate to the north. And about half the movement, so we said it was 20 millimeters a year, but half of it is through the lower fault and half of it through the upper one. So we have stress that is building up across Jamaica, and that can only be released by an earthquake. Maybe lots of little ones, or unfortunately, maybe a big one. So let's have a little look at the geology of Jamaica. So this is my maps, some very simple maps of these things. First thing you can see is there are lots of faults. This is not all the faults, it's just the big ones. And you'll see why some of them are significant as we go further through this. But they are there and they are significant. we can simplify the evolution of the geology of Jamaica into a set of things. Just do it this. The Grenville Draper said 4 phases. I've just slightly modified it. So the old bit is Cretaceous. Okay, it's Cretaceous rocks. Okay, it's the time of the dinosaurs. But the interesting thing about it is that if you go to the eastern part of Jamaica, so you go to Bath area and St. Thomas, those rocks are completely different to if you go to central Jamaica or just east of Kingston. And those rocks formed a long, long way apart, 1 to 2,000 kilometers apart. And they've been brought together afterwards. So different bits of Jamaica come from very, very different places. They then got put together and basins were formed. And then after that, you've got the carbonates, the white limestone that covers most of Jamaica is there. But for us, the significant thing is that about 14 million years ago, Jamaica started getting uplifted. And it got uplifted because faults started moving. And it's those faults that are moving that cause a problem with the earthquakes. So those are the ones that cause us to have earthquakes at the present time. Just for a bit of fun, I'll show you some of the old things. So the oldest rocks in Jamaica, these are out in St. Mary. These are fossils, 135 million years old. MA means million years, okay? Million annums, that's what it means. And a little root is called Ruta Tule, which was first described in Mexico. The oldest mineral in Jamaica is 2.25 billion years old. There's nothing in Jamaica as old as that, other than these things. And these things basically came off North America, ended up in an ocean, went down a subduction zone, came up a volcano, and ended up in Jamaica. So the oldest things in Jamaica are actually really old. Just crystals. I mean, they're not very big, but they are there. And actually, I've never told anybody about this, so you're the first person to hear this. What we actually do is we have the earthquake unit. Now, the earthquake unit records and is responsible for recording what goes on in terms of earthquakes. And so it has a whole series of actual seismometers that are across the island. And this is where we actually record the information. So this is funded by the Jamaican government. And we have these, and there are 13 stations across the island. Okay, so that's the 13 stations. You'll see 2 of them turn up a little bit later, which you can actually look at yourselves. So this is how we record what happens in Jamaica. We can record the earthquakes because we have a seismic network which records what is going on. So when an earthquake happens, we record it. If you feel it, go online to the earthquake unit and make a report. Say, I felt an earthquake. And I'll go into a little bit more about that in a short while. Now, if we put together a lot of the earthquakes, this is what we see. There's a dirty great big cluster. And that dirty great big cluster is somewhere to the northeast of Kingston. So that's where a lot of the earthquakes are. Now, is that good or is that bad? Well, we don't know too much. There could be lots of little ones and it relieves the stress and maybe there's not a big one, or it could be transferring the stress to somewhere we might get a bigger one. We don't know all of that information at the present time. But you can see out, if you go west, you can see little lines, and those little lines are faults, which are actually active. Okay, so sort of trending northwest to southeast. I can lie that back over the geology. So there's the geology, and if we put them back over it, you'll see they sit over that area where you've got those 2 big faults that run down and curve up. So they come in, Plantain Garden Fort, curves up towards the north. So that cluster of earthquakes is related to the curvature of that fault. And we're still trying to work out the details of that. Does that mean that that is where we're going to get the big earthquakes? We don't know. That is certainly why the Blue Mountains are still going up. That's why the Blue Mountains are very high. They shouldn't be that high. The only reason that are high is because they're being continuously uplifted. Come back to the little beach balls. I don't want you to look at this too much, but these are the beach balls. And you can see these different things in there. And you see there's a load of different faults in there that do different things. But if you look at the top left, you've got one which is strike slip. And that's what we see. We see this big strike slip pattern because we're right on the edge of the Caribbean plate. And you can look through this and you can work with it, but I'm not going to go through it that much, just to simply say, these are the sorts of things we can work out. Another fun thing we can play with, and this is what the earthquake unit does, is to actually measure how Jamaica deforms. Okay, so you use a GPS system to nowadays to tell you how to get from A to B and follow these things. But if you have a very detailed one, it can tell you within millimeters of where you are. And if you go and measure that over many years, you can actually show you what is going on. So what this is going on is showing you how much different bits of Jamaica are moving relative to the actual Caribbean plate. And you notice there's two offshore keys. They're not moving so much. And then you come up to southern Jamaica, that's moving more. And then you go to northern Jamaica and it's moving even more. And think about that. So what's actually happening is Jamaica is being squashed. If Jamaica is being squashed, the only thing that can happen is that at some point faults must move. So that's how we know that these things are going on. This is sort of putting it together. I'm not going to actually go with that much, but it actually explains, the diagram at the top right explains why this is happening. But I don't think we have to worry about that too much. Okay, so another thing we can look at is what do the surface rocks, the shallow rocks, do in terms of earthquakes? And this really depends on the consistency of those rocks. So if they're nice hard limestones, like the white limestone that is in Long Mountain or up in the Red Hills, they don't move so much. But when you actually move into the flatlands, which is made sands and gravels, they move more when you get seismic waves coming through. And that is problematic. What that means is that anything built in those areas is going to be greatly affected by earthquakes compared to something built on the solid rocks. Okay, so this is something that shows the Kingston area, and it is something bearing in mind. Look, as you go towards the waterfront, down Old Town, that is the more problematic area. But virtually all the central part of Kingston is problematic. That is an issue because a lot of our infrastructure, fire stations, up park, camp, police stations, hospitals, they're all built in these areas. A big earthquake, they're going to be damaged. So when we think about building our infrastructure in the future, we've got to think about building it in places that are either not so susceptible to these things, or if we're going to build them in those places, can withstand the actual nature of the earthquakes. And that just sort of says it there. So the white limestones, yeah, Red Hills, Long Mountain, pretty competent, not too much of a problem. Doesn't mean a big earthquake won't destroy things. Cretaceous and Eocene clastics up. If you go up into the areas, as you go up Pepin and up towards Irishtown, you get more likely landslides and this sort of thing. And then the flat areas are going to be the worst places because of this amplification due to the fact it's unconsolidated rocks. So what we have to do is we have to think about, okay, we must build in the right way. You might notice high-rise buildings are going up in a lot of Kingston. Are they looking to see whether they can withstand these earthquakes? I don't know, but they should be looking at it. Historically, we don't have too many big earthquakes, but we have two very obvious ones: 1692, which is of the destruction of Port Royal, and 1907, which is the destruction of Kingston, effectively. There are others. 1957 is Western Jamaica, which is when actually Montego Bay or areas in St. James were affected. And the most recent really big one was 2005. You was out in the middle of Jamaica, so it really didn't actually get that much attention, but at least one house fell down at that time. But you can look at these things. So this is Judgment Cliffs. Some of you may know it. That is a big landslide that happened at the time of the 1692 earthquake. And it was said it was judgment on the bad people that lived beneath it. That's where its name came from. And then in 1907, we've got the Kingston earthquake, which destroyed a lot of things. You've got on the left and caused areas to subside. And so here you've got some palm trees sitting underwater. So can you look at earthquakes itself? Well, you can. Okay, so this is an app which you can actually load in your own phones. It's called Station Monitor. It's run by IRIS, which is an international group that does this. And two of our stations in the earthquake unit are actually on this. So you look there on the right, that's what you normally see. Okay, so the hours are on the side. They're in universal time because we got to deal with universal time, and the minutes are on the bottom. Okay, and there's nothing. See, there's absolutely nothing there. Number 5 is an event somewhere, but clearly we didn't pick it up. Okay, so it may be somewhere in the Pacific or something like that, but that is one that's been recorded. Okay, but you can do this real time. You can download this app and you can watch this at the moment. Now, I'm going to go back a few days, 20th of January, where we started. And this is what you see on one of our stations in Jamaica on the 20th of January. And at the top there, you see 2 closely spaced earthquakes. Okay, and they're on the right in terms of that. And those are the ones that were in the eastern part of the Caribbean. And you can see the event there, it magnified out. But equally, some of you remember, nobody said anything, but if some of you remember, there was a big earthquake in Argentina as well. And that one is number 7, sitting at the bottom. And that's there as well. So when there is an earthquake, you can actually look at these things on your own, or if you feel something happening, you can look at this and you can see if there's actually an earthquake that's happened. So you can actually do your own thing and you can see these things happening. We have to think about what we do for earthquakes, and earthquakes aren't like hurricanes. You don't get a warning. Okay, hurricane coming, I got 3 days to get ready for it, that sort of thing. Doesn't work like that. So really for earthquakes, you need to make an action plan. Okay, so your children, your friends, everybody else, what are you going to do if it's an earthquake? Okay, so your children might be at school. your family maybe somewhere else. You've got to make a decision. Okay, what do you try and do? If it's not very serious, probably get home. If it's serious, you probably need to stay where you are if you're in a safe place and wait until you actually understand more things. Bearing in mind, a lot of things may go down. You might lose this cell contact and all that sort of stuff. You need to keep a survival kit, okay? You got a hurricane kit. Well, hopefully you got a hurricane kit. If you got a hurricane kit that actually is working through the summer months, well, keep it or replace it, eat it and replace it and use it for the winter months. Not that we have really winter. And then you've got something there all the time and have a first aid kit with it as well. And then in that sense, you've got something. I remember the big issue is we might well have an earthquake. It's those first 5-6 days you have to survive before people come here and help us. So you need to have enough stuff to survive those days. Consider running earthquake drills. You want to run earthquake drills, which basically help you plan. I mean, it's amazing. When an earthquake happens, people don't know what to do because they're not used to it. So if you actually do that, it works very well. I mean, I've heard situations where children do these drills very frequently, and when one actually does happen, they go underneath the tables and they basically look after themselves without having to be told to do it. So it's very important for that. And ODPEM, Office of Disaster and Preparedness Management, and the Earthquake Unit can advise you on these sorts of things. If you've got a school, if you've got a building, if you've got a business, and they will provide you with the information you can work with it. And also remember that earthquake can cause a tsunami. So if you are close to the sea and you feel a really strong shock, you probably should think about moving to higher ground just in case. You don't have much time, but move, and that would be a good thing. When it happens, well, if you're driving, try and find a safe place to pull over. You've got to be away from buildings or anything else that may fall on you. That's the sort of thing that you have to deal with. If you're outside, you move away from buildings, if you can, and you lay on the ground. Why do you lay on the ground? Well, remember, I talked about those surface waves. Come across, looking at ripples. Well, if they come across and they hit you, and they're moving up and down by a meter, they will throw you in the ground and you'll break your legs and everything else. If you're laying on the ground, you've got a better place or better chance of surviving. So if you've got a really strong thing, go down, lie on the ground, and let it pass. And if you're inside, well, if it's possible, get outside or cover your head. Your head is the most protective thing that you have. You have to protect it as far as you can. Get under something that will protect you. Wooden is good because wooden bounces, doorways, if need be, or whatever you can find. You have to make that decision on that particular point. Stay away from objects and furniture that can fall on you. So you don't want to be near, you've got all your ornaments up there, you don't want them falling on you. That's not the sort of thing you want. So what you've got to do is you've got to be basically think about, okay, if I had an earthquake happen now, where would I go? Where's my table? Where am I going to get under? I'm going to hang on to my table to make sure it doesn't jump away from me. And that way, you've got a good chance of surviving even a very, very dangerous earthquake. So that's the sorts of things I wanted to say. There's a lot of information out there. You can get a lot of information from our department, Department of Geography and Geology, from the Earthquake Unit, Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, and my little thing there, my website there helps with understanding the geology and those sorts of things. So that's the sorts of things I wanted to say. And I hope that that has been interesting and there are plenty of scopes for questions.
Thank you, Professor Simon. Well, I almost
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to have a Q&A session.
Right.
And I'd just like to
sorry,
open the floor. But just to give people, since people are probably thinking what they want to ask, I want to open the batting with two questions, just two quick questions. What was the depth of the Haitian earthquake? Because I noticed what you said about depth, that is very important. We don't get that kind of information when we get earthquakes. You want to get the magnitude.
It's about 13 kilometers.
So that would be considered what, near surface or 30?
Very, very near surface. Yeah.
So
I didn't mention this, but along the northern edge of the Caribbean, so Haiti, us, Dominican Republic, you basically only have shallow earthquakes. So if we had a big earthquake in those areas, it's going to be felt very, very seriously.
Okay. And my second question, and then I'll let everybody jump in. Can you identify, I mean, you did touch a bit on some areas, but let me ask the question anyway. Which areas are less likely to suffer from an earthquake?
You mean in Jamaica?
In Jamaica, yes.
That's a very interesting one because it really depends on which of the faults are active, and that is not so obvious. We have those big clusters of earthquakes sort of centered northeast of Kingston, and so there's a lot there, but they're mostly small. We don't really know where the big ones come because the very big ones happened before we could actually measure them. It comes also into thinking about where we put big infrastructure. What I would say is that what we need to do is to map out all the big faults in Jamaica and be further away from those when we put in infrastructure. I mean, we're thinking about at the moment whether we're going to put, how are we going to provide energy? Because fossil fuels are the sort of thing we move away from. So what do? I mean, are we going to go for wind-driven, solar-driven, or are we going to go for nuclear? If we're going for nuclear, it has to be away from somewhere it can actually have a big problem of earthquakes. So we have to think about those sorts of things. I would say the South Coast is a bad idea because I think there's a big fault that goes along the whole of the South Coast. So I would put it somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. The floor is now open. I see one hand up, and I'm going to ask you if you just put your hand, to show your hand, and we deal with those persons. They'll get priority if you do that. This one is. Hold on, let me see if I can make up the name. I said director. One second. Yeah, Director Pansita Walker.
Yes.
Yeah, your hand is at the top of the list.
Thank you.
So go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Really happy that I was able to join Professor Mitchell. I'm excited. Learning more. I'm a teacher at St. Aloysius, and my question, not so much, question and a comment. I was told, and I'm happy that Kiwanis Club, I'm not seeing a name, but the person from Kiwanis Club, Kingston, did mention and ask where is a safer place in Jamaica. But we were told recently doing our drills at school that there's no safe zone in Kingston. I'm not sure if that statement is really accurate, but that's what we're being told, that there's no safe zone because the buildings that we are, especially our school, is over 100 years old. So really no safe zone. Yes. My thing is, I'm happy that you mentioned that. I've never thought about doing a drill so much or having these action plans for home. I've
Yeah.
had these at my workplace and more focusing on work area. Now that you have said it, what I can do now is sensitize not only at my home, but my parents to
Yeah.
say, make sure you have these things ready, the action plan for the earthquake, the survival kit, the hurricane kit, the earthquake kits, have kits
Yeah.
for things to last for 5 to 6 days. I made a note, and I will definitely go now and put up the UTPEM number in my class and have it at home as well. Yes, and I'm really happy for that because I never thought about, I don't know, because when we're doing the drills at school, we just focus at, really because we spend the greater part at work.
Yeah.
So we sort
Yeah,
of,
well, you see, I mean, an earthquake happens anytime, so it can happen in the
yes,
middle of the night.
true,
So
that's true.
you need to have a plan, and every single person needs
Yes.
a plan to say, if it happens,
Yes,
if it happens, what do I do to protect my family, my loved ones, my friends, and that sort of thing? And that's what we have to be doing. It's as simple as that. You just, and it's a logical thing to do. It's but people don't like to think about it.
True.
But it's what they have to think about because it will happen. One day it will happen.
Yes,
And
that's
you're
so true.
better
I'm
off,
happy.
and you're better off if you're doing it than not doing it.
Yes, having the know, better to be safe than yes.
Yeah, and
Thank
tell
you
everybody
very much.
else. Tell
Yes.
everybody else that you meet as well to be prepared and think about these things because it
Yes,
will
that's
happen one
true.
day.
I'll definitely have my notes and I definitely will go
Yeah.
back. Even at home now, we're gonna have a meeting, say, listen, what if it happened? My second and last question, my next question now following that is just for my own personal knowledge. Is it that when we do get the earthquake, I never normally study, but I'm just wondering, is it that it just keep in this time zone that we always say that earthquake awareness week is between January X to that? So it does, is it that it don't fall out other times?
No, it's not. It
can be anytime.
It's simply because we have had big earthquakes in January.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, Haiti one was in January. But if you go back, the other ones haven't been in January, they've been in June or anything.
Okay. Okay.
So,
yeah.
No.
As I'm saying, why we just focus and then well, I
think the reason is that we focus on hurricanes in June.
Yes.
And take it 6 months back, we worry about earthquakes at that time.
Yes.
Hurricanes have a season. Earthquakes have no season, none at all. They can move whenever they want to. So really, we have to talk about that all the year around.
Exactly.
We have at the moment, we have earthquake awareness. But the key thing is to say, look, it might be tomorrow, it might be a month's time, it might be 4 months' time, might be 6 months' time, might be 8 months' time, doesn't matter. We have to be ready for when it happens, so that if it happens, you try and protect as many people as you can by being prepared. That's the way of doing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We want to thank you for that. We want to move on to the next person who has their hand up. That's PE Eurydice. Could you go ahead?
Yes. Hi, good evening, Professor Simon.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for this presentation. And my questions are, one, in this season, I've heard that the plates the tectonic plates are moving faster, but there is an unusual activity that the space between the plates, or must be under the plates, that activity is moving slower. So help me understand that.
There's no real evidence to say anything about that. I mean, these things are basically moving. And we wouldn't have more information to say that something is going on at a particular time. We might see that as a volcano becomes active, but that doesn't mean the plates are changing. The plates aren't going to change their movements that much because the driving forces are not like that. They don't change every day. So I don't think you have to worry about that. I don't think that is a problem.
Okay, so also help me understand, in the case of the tsunami, say one in Southeast Asia, it was observed that the water, the ocean receded for maybe a couple of days prior to when it tried to reclaim the land and when it came onshore. Help me understand what is happening there as the water recedes, the ocean recedes.
Right. The big thing is that tsunamis are driven by changes in water. So in that case, what happened was that the fault moved dramatically, and what that does is displaces water. Now, the way it displaces water is different on each side of the fault. So on one side, it might drop the water down, so you're going to get a recession of it, and then it comes back in to replace that on the other side. And remember, these things are waves. I mean, if you drop a big object in your bath, it doesn't just do one thing. You get waves that go backwards and forwards. So one of the big things with this is the fact that you move a very large amount of water. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, this is a big fault. It's a big subduction zone. It's a big thrust fault, and it moves along a very, very long, maybe 1,000 kilometers. And even if you only move it 1 kilometer, or sorry, 1 meter, that is going to displace so much water that has to be replaced. And as it comes in, it draws the water back under it and it goes on land. And that's the sort of thing you see.
Okay.
So it's actually a wave that's happening then.
Yeah, it's a big wave. It's a big wave. It's a big wave, but it's a wave of gigantic proportions that you actually don't see. It's not like a normal wave. I mean, if you look at the shore, I mean, you go and sit and watch a wave come in. It comes in, it goes, and it drags out and does the same thing. Okay. This is just doing it on, 100 times the scale of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your response.
Okay, thank you. Next person is Newton. PE Newton, go ahead.
Thank you, DP. Great presentation, Professor Mitchell. I have a simple question. For a good portion of my life, I was told that I was hearing that a major earthquake is expected in Jamaica about every 100 years. And from the narrative that was being bandied about at one point, I figured it would have been here already. Has something changed why that has done? I'm not hearing that anymore. Or is it that something has happened that we're not expecting it, or we have just gotten, we're just put it to the back of the front burner?
All right. I think the problem is that we do not have enough years to look at. So we've had 2 major earthquakes in 500 years. Are they abnormal, or in other words, have there been more than usual, or have there been less? 2 in 500 years. How do you work out whether that's normal, whether we should be getting more, whether we should be getting less? I'm not sure it's easy to work out. If you look at Haiti is on the same fault zone, has had 2 within 10 years. It's not very easy to work out what the probability of getting these things is. And people say this, oh yeah, we get an earthquake every 100 years. Well, it doesn't come on the dot. And even if it did, we don't know the probability. And we don't know it can happen tomorrow or whatever the case is. I think it's very difficult to actually say that. All I can say is that we will get one day, Maybe it's tomorrow. I hope it's not. Maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 50 years. I don't think that you can actually say it's going to happen at a certain frequency, and that's the problem. That's why we have to be prepared, because when it does happen, we want to be prepared and save as many lives as possible. That's the key.
Okay, thank you for that response and the question and the response. And if you heard, I noticed you had your hand up, but you took it down. Have you changed your mind, or you heard your question answered? Okay, who else would like to ask a question? Well,
if it's true.
Go ahead. Yes, you had your hand up, but you took it down.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to ascertain the purpose of your unit. All this information, because you still can't predict earthquakes or anything like that. Do you have any influence on building codes? Because recently we hear that 20% of building blocks does not meet up to the Bureau of Standard criteria.
Yeah. I think what I would say is that we will want to have that, and part of the way of going forward is to, where I showed that pattern for Kingston and showing how things basically, it was bad down there and you would have to build things better. What we would want to do is to put that across Jamaica and basically to say, well, you've got to build in this way, in this part of Jamaica to make things safer. Now, that requires the government to come in and make sure that the building codes work in that way. We can't enforce that. We are not enforcers. We can actually provide the data that actually tells you this is a bad idea if you do it like this. And I think that is where we need, and there is a disconnect between where the scientific evidence is to do things and the actual enforcement of actually making sure that people do the right things. And the problem with that is it's not going to be the companies that build these things. It's going to be the people or the companies or whatever they are that live in them and work in them that are going to be damaged by this.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see a hand up right now, but let me ask you this then, Professor. If earthquakes, you said the magnitude is a measure of the release of energy.
Energy, yeah.
So, and really this, you talked about the stress building up. So
yeah.
Is there no way to measure the stress in areas?
It's very difficult to see stress building up. That's the trouble. And also when stress will cause a particular fault to move. That's what our problem is. If we could do that, we're predicting them, but we can't do that. We can see that it's building up across Jamaica. But you know, if I say, well, it's building up across 50 kilometers of Jamaica, where's it going to move? I can't say that. That's where the problem comes.
Okay. Okay.
I wish I could. If I could tell you, well, don't build there or look after yourselves and move out of there or do something like that, but I can't.
And there's no historical information that says when we had this particular earthquake, the stress had reached a certain level.
No.
There's no data like that.
No, unfortunately, we only see stress in modern things. We do not see stress in ancient things. So when an earthquake happened in the past, we don't know what the stress
we don't know
was.
what it was. Right.
We can't do it. We only are managing now to measure these stresses building up. And I would imagine that we will get better in maybe 150 or 100 years' time. It's not going to help us. But we will understand it better, and we might actually find out, oh, there's ways you can predict these things. But at the moment, we're not in that position. I wish we were, because it would save an awful lot of lives. And
okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Any more? Let me see. I see a hand that just went up. Oh, or is it that you really didn't take your hand down?
Oh, I just have a quick little question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so my last quick question is,
yep.
with this multiplicity of construction of high buildings,
Yeah.
does it affect or would it hasten the activity? Does it have any effect on the activity? I know it's way below the structure, but does it have any effect on the quickness that these?
I would like very much, and this is what I would like very much, to have one of these buildings, put accelerometers on them, which is one of the things that measures things, and work out if they're going to fall down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would like to do. And nobody so far has allowed us to do that. I don't know why, but I would like to go and work out what the ground acceleration would be. This is basically how the ground moves, and whether that is pretty much the same as the building. And if it is, the building will probably fall down. I would like to know. I would like to know with all these 6-story things, 7-story things that are going up at the moment, whether anybody has looked at this, and I doubt they have. If somebody wants to give us a call and say, come and have a look, we will probably have a look at it. But so far, nobody has. I would hate to be in a situation where we do have a reasonable earthquake and a lot of these things fall down and kill people when we could have done something about it. And believe me, if we find out that these things aren't good, then they can be retrofitted and the actual strength can be changed so that they actually don't fall down. But unless you actually know that, you can't do anything.
What I didn't understand what it is you said you want to be able to measure. Just explain that part.
Okay, well, you think about a Jello. Okay, you make a Jello. Okay, if you rock a Jello very quickly, it doesn't do much. Yeah. Mm. If you rock it slowly at the right thing, it falls over. Okay, an earthquake does the same thing to a building. So if you've got an earthquake which produces a certain frequency that actually does something, it will knock over a building. Whereas if it's a different thing, it won't do it. So it's really coming down to that thing of saying, okay, if the building has, it basically, it vibrates at this level, and if the ground does the same thing, it will fall down. And if it doesn't, it won't.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
But yeah, but so you want to fit it with something that was gonna measure some movement? That's what you mean? Oh
yeah. We put accelerometers. We actually measure that, so they measure the movement on the building before it actually falls down. So we can put them on there now and work out what the building does. So when the wind blows, it says the building moves like this, and that tells us how the building moves. And if the ground moves at the same thing, it's got a problem.
But isn't it good though when buildings do move rather than being rigid? I've always heard that
it's good if they move, but not if they move at the same rate the ground moves, because the ground shakes at this and the building shakes at the same thing, the building's going to shake down. What you want is the building to shake at a different frequency so it doesn't shake down.
Okay, just one more question. Oh, I see a few more hands up. Let me see who's next.
What's your time, DP?
Yeah, okay. Peter Allen, and then we have we'll take one more after that. Just Peter Allen.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mitchell. Excellent presentation. My question is, I know you spoke about the depth of the event, and that has a lot to do with how it affects what is on the surface.
Yeah.
But is there any comparison around the world with earthquakes that have been, creating great destruction, and earthquakes that are happening in Jamaica since we start to measure them and the depth at which they take place? Because sometimes we get this feeling that if it measure X on the Richter scale, 6, 7.2 is a big earthquake. But that's not what you're really saying. You're saying it really depends on the depth of occurrence.
Yeah, the depth of the occurrence is very important. And you will see that if you, I mean, if you can set, you can actually basically look at, you can look at some of these places. In fact, you can basically ask USGS to send you information about these things, and basically, shallow ones cause damage, deep ones don't. It's as simple as that. So basically, they're shallow ones, and unfortunately, in our part of the Caribbean, it's always shallow. But if you go to the Lesser Antilles, it's deep. Can be deep.
Okay, I think we're about ready to wrap. I'll just give one more if there's one more, and then that's it. Okay, President Junior, back to you. Thank you very much, Professor Mitchell. President Junior, back to you. You may be muted.
Very good. Thank you, Professor. Quite a bit of information. I missed some of it because I was having a bad connection, but I've heard a lot through the question and answers and so on.
I think it's been good. I think it's been good, and I think that they enjoyed it. And I mean, I hope it's been information to people, because that's the whole point about doing this. It's basically providing information. So
and it's being recorded. It's being recorded. So we
very
have
good.
it on YouTube.
Yes, so we can always go back to it if we want.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Chairman, I see no?
No, Sadiki.
No. Sadiki, Chairman Sadiki. That is going to give us the vote of thanks. Give the vote of thanks. Sadiki, are you on? Still on? Are you been shaken by the earth? Are you been shaken by the earthquake?
Oh boy, a little bit scared of, the presentation, but the information is good,
It's excellent. Can't predict it, but
Yes, very excellent. So
yes.
Good even my fellow Kiwanian brothers and sisters and guests that have joined us tonight. So I'll be doing the vote of thanks to Professor Simon Mitchell. The Kiwanis Club of Kingston is extending its warmest gratitude and appreciation towards Professor Simon Mitchell, who has taken the time out of his busy schedule to deliver a well-learned topic on all you ever wanted to know about earthquakes and how to prepare. Professor, our knowledge and understanding has once again deepened as you have reminded us of what is an earthquake, the causes. I remember you mentioning the magnitude, the depth, the intensity, the pre-shock, aftershocks, the effects. It can create tsunamis, landslides, volcanoes.
Okay.
Right, the measures and precautions that we all need to take and look forward to. Given that there's an onset of an earthquake, right? And if that happens, we need to have action plan. I remember you talking about the action plans, the earthquake drills in schools, at work, at home. And to quote you, not if, but when we get a big one. And survival is key. So if you're indoors, get under a table, outside, lay flat. So we really enjoy your presentation this evening, Professor. Please, is there a certificate of appreciation? Please.
Yes, it's online now.
Oh, okay, it's on. Please accept this,
I'd also say, remember, you can look yourself at what is going on using that app I said. So Station Monitor, everybody can look themselves to see what is going on.
Yeah.
So if you feel something you think it's an earthquake, you can look it up yourself. That is something you can do.
Could you remind us what's the name of that app?
It's Station Monitor.
Station Monitor.
Okay, so everybody download it onto your phone. Station Monitor, Iris Station Monitor. And you can look, if you feel something, you can look and see if it was an earthquake, or if somebody tells you it's an earthquake, you can look it up and you can see what happened. That gives you the power to look at things. That takes it away from just listening to the media saying that's happened. That gives you the power to do whatever you want to yourself.
Station Monitor.
Station Monitor.
Is that only for Jamaica?
No, it's got basically places around the world. You just look for the Jamaican one to put it on there. It's got Haiti, it's got Dominican Republic. You can go around to China if you want. When they blew up that,
okay.
Remember when they blew up that boats somewhere in the Mediterranean? They exploded a boat. I went and looked and I could see that actually on that monitor. So I could actually find something nearby where I could actually see that. You can see it around the world. Okay, so this is something that is actually anybody can use. It's free out there. And if you know it's there, you can use it.
Okay.
Thank you, President. Back to you, President.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll now move to our sergeant at arms. You're finished with the vote of thanks.
Sorry,
Right,
I
Sadiki,
interrupted that, but that's like, but I think that's important that people understand.
Yes, President. I just wanted to say, you know, for Professor to accept the certificate of appreciation, and good night to you, sir.
Yes.
We will get it to you, Professor.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody. And you don't have to call me Professor.
Yes, we'll get it to you.
Simon's good. I don't need professors.
Okay.
All right. Thank you again. And we move to our Sarge now.
Okay, good night.
Chairman Zuri.
Good evening, everyone.
Long time.
No need to worry.
Good evening.
The Sarge will not be causing any earthquakes this evening.
Any earthquake tonight.
And it seems most of you have avoided the fault lines. So it seems to be very good. Right, but I am going to be sharing some jokes with you that I promise will not have you falling off your seats laughing. So nobody will cause an earthquake from falling. I wanted to start with a pun, a carpentry pun, but I was really not sure it would work.
Okay.
Anybody got that one? Okay, clearly not. I sold carpentry, woodwork. See? Still not seeing it? Okay. Okay. No need to worry. I told you it wasn't going to have you falling off your chairs. I sold my vacuum the other day. All it was doing was collecting dust.
That's what it's supposed to do. Good one.
Did you hear about the guy who invented the knock-knock joke? He won the Nobel Prize. And last one, what do you call a fake noodle? An imposter. So I had a roll call. So I was going to do my roll call. Well, I had it from last week, but I had to get off a little bit early last week. So I'm going to do my roll call this week. So I'm going to do Nelson Cole, Radcliffe Wilson, Owen Young Jr., Chairman Carlo Mason, Kiwanian Michael Archer, IPP Paul Peart, Kiwanian Andre Palmer, Chairman Sadiki Blake, Kiwanian Dimitri Mitchell, Kiwanian Marlon Martin. If any of these gentlemen are online, you have a charge of $300 for President Jr.'s bad connection, for his confusing the Kiwanian who is supposed to give the vote of thanks, and for Chairman Sadiki Blake's failure to see the certificate of appreciation. Have a good evening, everyone. See you again next week.
Thank you, Sarge. That's a good one. Okay. So we now move to our notices and announcements and interclubbing opportunities. DLG, William, anything to announce? DLG,
Yeah.
you're
Thank you, President
falling
Junior.
through.
Good
Yes.
evening, all.
You're still around after the earthquake.
In respect to notices and announcements.
Right.
Just a reminder that the second quarter DCM will be held at the University of Commonwealth Caribbean on Sunday, February 19th at 9:30. Please note in your diaries, you want a good turnout of Kiwanis. Just a reminder,
Yes.
registration for the Eastern Canada Caribbean Convention at Quebec City is now open. That is going to take place between 18th of May to the 20th of May. And the note in your diaries, Kiwanis International Convention has been held in Minneapolis, Minnesota from the 18th of June to the 21st of June. In respect to interclubbing opportunities, tomorrow evening at 6:30, Cyber Connect will be having a face-to-face meeting at Footprints Cafe. They'll be doing induction of 3 new members. Tomorrow evening, New Kingston will be having their meeting, which starts at 6 p.m., which is entitled Getting to Know You. And then on Thursday, North St. Andrew will be having their earthquake awareness and preparation meeting. The presenter will be Richard Thompson, who is the Acting Director General of the Office of Disaster Preparedness.
Good.
Those are your announcements and interclubbing opportunities. President Junior, you may ask any other member
Yes.
to make an announcement. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, DLG. Are there any other members that would like to make a quick announcement?
Yes, quickly, please.
Okay.
Kiwanis Club of Trafalgar is inviting you to a Black History and Reggae Month meeting entitled Shades of Africa. And this will be on the 15th of February, 2023, 7 p.m. The venues at Arden High School Conference Room, 10 Arden Road, and the cost, including 50/50, is only $500. Fashion show, best African outfit, wins a prize, and other prize. Good music, good food, lime and dine, come join us. All right?
Okay, we will certainly try and be with as many of us with you.
Okay, blessings.
Any other? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get the venue.
Arden High School Conference Room.
Arden High School.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other announcements? Are there any other announcements? Okay, DP Stewart, could you do the thought of the week?
Okay, President Junior. I have 2 thoughts as usual. First one is the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. That's my first one.
Yes.
And the second one, it's not the will to win that matters. Everyone has that. It's the will to prepare to win that really matters. So those are my 2 thoughts, President Junior.
Thank you, DP Stewart. Are there any other thing we'd like to talk about quickly, very, very quickly? Anything else?
Well,
President Junior.
Yes.
Last Saturday
PD.
was Kiwanis 108th anniversary. It was also the 8th anniversary of the Kiwanis Club of Barbican, a club that we
Okay.
formed on the
Right.
Kiwanis 100th anniversary. And it
Okay.
was very disappointing that we could not find a delegation to attend that meeting.
Okay. Really sorry about that, PDT. Really sorry about that. And thanks for your observation anyhow. Anything else we'd like to discuss? As I said very quickly.
Maybe I could just sort out that next week being a fifth Tuesday will be our games evening at the Secretariat. And I'm really looking forward to
and we'd like
sorry. And we're really looking forward to seeing as many of our members and guests come out and have a fun evening with all the games that you can think of. We'll have them. And bring your own as well.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder, DP.
Okay.
President Junior.
If we have nothing, yes.
Sorry, I would be remiss if I did not remind the members that Major Francine Brown from the Francis Ham Home Residence for the Senior Citizen of Salvation Army is inviting us, or a few of us, to a little celebration they're having for Miss Birdie, who will be celebrating her 100th birthday. It begins at
100th birthday.
Friday coming.
When is that? When is that, DLG? Friday.
Friday, midday.
Friday. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, DLG. And thank you all for coming. Yes, let's go on, DLG.
Yeah, I just
You're
mentioned
going
that
to
so
say
far,
something?
Pastor Eric and myself have committed ourselves to going.
Confirm that to go Friday. I will tell you what I'm doing. It sounds like I have an engagement at that time, but I will tell you. Okay.
I should join you there.
So, very good evening to you. Could we just raise our glass and drink? Oh, you're still on? Oh, we're getting commitment for that session. All right. Could you all then just PE, you want to say something? I see you on. Could we therefore just raise our glass?
I just confirm with DLG that I'll join them on Friday.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good. So could you all just raise our glasses and drink a toast to Kiwanis International and Friends of Jamaica? And at this time, I'd like to terminate this meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. Thank you all for coming, and a very good night to you all. Thank you. It is your time, PD. I mean, PP Stewart, it is your time to start.
Where is the love to be found, young people? Nowhere around. For I woke up Saturday morning, feeling sticky and dirty after work. Took a walk down a riverside. I roll a little split, sat down on a stone and start to cool off with my burden down a riverside. For I check around the youths and I try to teach them.